I hate to say it, but it's no contest. I mean, 50 Cent is just the king of diss. You got to just move on.
But he does all of it on the internet.
How are you? So much to talk about. So, T, I got to ask. Well, first of all, Tiny, I want to ask you if it's okay. What were your first thoughts when you saw your picture on this guy's Instagram? Were you like,
that's so last week, man. We ain't studying that, man.
well,
We got the #1 song in the country, man. Let them know, man.
So
On March 5th, 50 Cent jumped online and dropped a wild message, calling out a documentary titled Surviving T.I. and Tiny, and claiming over 20 assault cases were tied to T.I.'s name. The post didn't stay up long, it vanished within hours, but the damage was already done, and people were already talking. Even though it disappeared fast, the impact hit hard.
It opened up the door to my bedroom, as you shouldn't have to either. Opened up the door to my bedroom for everybody to come in and chime in and make their opinions about what we do and don't do or should or shouldn't do. But I will say this, whatever we ever have done has been done with consensual adults.
50 wasn't coming with a diss track this time, he was hinting at something way heavier, the same kind of move people say helped bring Diddy down. Meanwhile, T.I. had just told TMZ the feud was so last week, saying he was locked in on a #1 hit and a final album to seal his legacy. He really thought the situation was behind him, but 50 made it clear it wasn't even close. I thought it was finished, but 50 shut that idea down quick. The timing felt way too precise to be random. T.I. was setting up his final album like a victory lap, ready to leave the game on his own terms. Then 50's post dropped right in the middle of that rollout, tying the documentary straight to it and basically warning that every interview would turn into questions about those cases.
yes, that's right. Lawyer Tyrone Blackburn is going to authorities, asking and encouraging state and federal prosecutors to start a criminal investigation into T.I. and Tamika Harris, aka Tiny, on behalf of 11 accusers.
The message was loud, this wasn't going away, and T.I. might need serious crisis management ASAP. T.I. had spent the previous days dropping diss tracks and standing side by side with his sons, showing himself as a man defending his family. He was loud, visible, and ready for a fight. But 50 didn't come back with music at all. He skipped the whole rap battle angle and went straight for something deeper. This wasn't about bars anymore. This was about tearing at the foundation. What started as a rap feud suddenly felt way more serious, almost like a calculated takedown plan. And what made it even more intense was what happened after that post disappeared. 50 didn't pull it down because he changed his mind, no way. The deletion itself looked like part of the move. There was no apology, no walk back, no I went too far moment. The post vanished, but the message stayed alive, spreading even faster because people couldn't stop talking about it. That left T.I. in a tough spot. How do you respond to something that technically isn't even there anymore? 50 had created a situation where the idea alone did damage. No proof needed, no follow-up required. And that silence from 50, it didn't feel like backing off. It felt controlled, patient, like he was waiting for the pressure to build on its own. Then there's the title itself, Surviving T.I. and Tiny. That wasn't random at all. It directly echoed the documentary style that shook up R. Kelly's career and changed everything for him. 50 had already tapped into that same format with Diddy, even helping produce that project and seeing firsthand how powerful it could be. So when he put that same kind of label on it didn't feel like talk, it felt like a warning with a proven playbook behind it. This wasn't empty talk or some rapper chasing attention. This was a producer pointing at a formula that already worked and that made the threat hit way harder. There was history behind it, results behind it, and people knew exactly what that kind of rollout could do. The allegations at the center of all this had been out in public for years, but the legal side made things complicated. Back in 2021, the LAPD opened an investigation, putting everything under a serious spotlight. Later, prosecutors decided not to file charges, pointing to the statute of limitations. Then in 2024, a civil lawsuit popped up but got dismissed by a federal judge that same August. Through all of that, T.I. and Tiny were never convicted of any crimes. So legally, there was no criminal ruling against them, but at the same time, there wasn't a clear final statement that completely shut everything down either. The situation just sat there, unresolved, stuck in a gray area, investigated but not settled, dismissed but not fully cleared. That kind of in-between space created a real vulnerability. And that's exactly why the documentary angle carried so much weight. 50 didn't need a conviction to make noise. He just needed claims that were serious enough to have been investigated, and that box was already checked. That gap between what the legal system decided and what a documentary could present. That's where things got tricky. T.I. could point to the dropped case, the dismissed lawsuit, and no criminal findings, but the conversation wouldn't stop there. None of that would really matter if a documentary actually dropped. If it featured people telling their stories, laid out a full timeline of what was claimed, and used that surviving style to frame everything as a bigger system failure, it wouldn't need a courtroom to make an impact. The courts never convicted him, but a documentary doesn't need a conviction. It just needs a story that feels real enough to stick. And that's where things get even more intense. The legal system never created a clear narrative that made the outcome feel like a clean resolution. Instead, it left gaps a documentary could easily fill in its own way. That opens the door for public opinion to take over. And once that happens, facts and perception can start to blur fast. Then there's the big question, what did 50 actually know? His deleted post claimed there were more than 20 assault cases tied to T.I.'s name. But public reports back when everything first came out mentioned 11 accusers working with an attorney and over 30 people who had reached out. That number 20 only showed up in 50's post and nowhere else. So now people are left wondering, was that number inflated, or did 50 have access to information nobody else saw? Either way, it created serious pressure. If he was bluffing, it was a bold move. If he wasn't, then that suggests there could be more behind the scenes. And T.I. had no clear way to figure out which one it was. That uncertainty alone kept the tension high and the situation under control. The tension got even heavier because of what T.I. had already put out in public years earlier. Back in 2019, during a podcast, he spoke about taking his teenage daughter to the gynecologist to check her hymen, presenting it like it was just normal parenting. That moment didn't stay quiet. It spread fast and sparked serious backlash all over the world. Tiny later confirmed those visits had started when their daughter was around 15 or 16, which only added more fuel to the situation. The reaction was immediate and loud. The World Health Organization had already stated that so-called virginity testing has no medical value and is considered a harmful practice. On top of that, lawmakers in New York even began drafting legislation aimed at banning it after those comments surfaced. Then it went even deeper. Their daughter later spoke out on the family's reality show, describing the experience as traumatic and saying it made her feel like her body wasn't truly her own. That part hit people hard and stayed in the public conversation. All of this was already documented and out there. So when 50 brought up the idea of a documentary, it wasn't about exposing brand new secrets, it was about organizing everything that had already happened into one powerful narrative. That's what made it so serious. The threat wasn't discovery, it was structure, turning past controversies into something focused, polished, and impossible to ignore. The bigger question hanging in the air was whether there was more beneath the surface that nobody had seen yet. That deleted post had people thinking was 50 hinting at something deeper, something not public yet. The way it appeared and then vanished didn't feel random at all. It felt like a signal. 50 had posted and deleted things before, sure, but this situation felt way more calculated and deliberate. Then people started connecting the dots. The Diddy documentary followed a similar pattern, quiet at first, almost no noise. Then suddenly, a major announcement, and next thing you know, the project is real with a network backing it. 50 even reminded people in his caption how silent he had been before that dropped. That wasn't just a comment, it felt like a warning. Silence didn't mean he stepped back, it meant he was working behind the scenes. And that's what made this hit harder than a normal social media moment. This wasn't just talk, there was already a track record of turning situations like this into something big and career-shaking. At the same time, T.I.'s move to calm things down started to look off. He told TMZ the feud was so last week, trying to downplay everything and frame himself as just defending his family. But with everything building like this, that response didn't seem to match the level of what he was up against. T.I. tried to shift the spotlight back to his music, pushing attention toward his song, climbing the charts. That interview dropped right before 50 came in with the documentary threat. and the timing couldn't have looked worse. It made T.I. seem like he thought everything was wrapped up, like he had already moved on, only to realize that situation was never his to shut down in the first place. 50 controlled the pace, and that move made it crystal clear. From that point on, T.I. was stuck reacting instead of leading. Every move started to look like a response, and stepping away from the situation risked making it seem like he was dodging something bigger. This wasn't just a back and forth anymore. The whole situation had shifted beyond music and into something way harder to control. The real issue sat in that legal gray area. This was no longer about proving guilt or innocence in court. T.I. could point to the LAPD investigation and the dismissed civil case as proof that the legal system had already done its part. But 50 didn't have to play by those rules. He could ignore all of that and present a documentary as the accountability people felt they never got. That's what made it impossible to shut down. Neither side could fully cancel out the other. T.I. stood without a criminal conviction, but at the same time, his reputation was locked into this ongoing narrative. That tension didn't cancel out, it stacked up. Dropping another diss track or doing more interviews wouldn't fix it. This wasn't temporary, it felt permanent, tied to every conversation about his final album. And honestly, whether the documentary even exists yet almost doesn't matter. There's no trailer, no confirmed network, no official production timeline as of mid-March. It might never drop, but the thread alone was already doing exactly what 50 needed it to do. Every journalist covering T.I.'s final album was now guaranteed to bring up the cases. Every headline tied to the feud carried that extra weight, like something bigger was always lurking in the background. 50 didn't even need to drop a documentary at that point. The idea alone had already done the job. It turned T.I. exit from music into something tangled up with unanswered questions, and those questions didn't need clear answers to keep causing pressure. And inside the Harris household, cracks had already been showing long before any documentary talk. For years, T and Tiny, the family hustle painted a picture of unity, success, and a tight family bond. That was the image people saw, but it wasn't the full story. Because at the same time, there were moments that told a different story. You had T.I. joking with King about becoming a father, keeping things light on one side, while in that same environment, his daughter spoke about feeling like she didn't fully have control over her own body. That contrast didn't stay hidden, it was captured on camera and shared with the public. That gap between what was shown and what was actually happening started to stand out more and more. And now, that exact gap was turning into material that could be used to build a much bigger narrative. Then there's what the cameras didn't show at all. T didn't have full control over how this feud was playing out. King Harris moved on his own timing without waiting for any green light. When 50 posted that unflattering image of Tiny, King fired back quickly, and things escalated fast, way beyond what T.I. had done in his own diss tracks. The video rant, the tombstone image, the shirt showing up in a music video, every single move came from King himself. None of it was directed by T.I. Then Damani went on The Breakfast Club and admitted he dropped his diss track without even telling his father, because he knew T.I. would try to control how it came out. That says everything. T.I. wasn't leading a coordinated response, he was stuck reacting to moves his own kids were making on their own. Then things took a turn that made the whole situation even harder to manage. When King started selling products with Sabrina Jackson's image on the packaging, it crossed into a different level. This wasn't just online drama anymore, it became something tied to money. The tension turned into a product, and as long as people kept paying attention, those items kept moving. That created a real problem T.I. couldn't fix with music or interviews. The person benefiting from keeping everything going wasn't T.I., it was his own son, moving with a completely different mindset and motivation. That kind of setup makes it almost impossible to shut things down cleanly, and by the time Rick Ross stepped in, it was clear the situation had already grown way beyond the original back and forth. Ross has his own long history with 50, so when he publicly asked for that shirt in a size 3XL, it wasn't random, it was a clear sign of where he stood. That moment showed the conflict had expanded, pulling in bigger names and stretching far past where it started. But Ross wasn't stepping in to follow T.I. lead at all. He had his own reasons for going at 50 Cent, reasons that had nothing to do with T. I Don't's album rollout or protecting his family image. That's what made this even messier. What looked like support around T.I. wasn't some tight, controlled alliance. It was a mix of people moving on their own agendas, their own timing, and their own desire to escalate things however they wanted. And that's where the situation started to spiral fast. What began as a contained back and forth suddenly grew way bigger than the original issue. The Versus talks, the arguments over deals, the diss tracks, that was all between two sides at first. But once King put Sabrina Jackson's image on merchandise and started selling it, everything shifted. Now the feud stepped into a whole new space. Anybody with past issues with 50 suddenly had an opening to jump in, no invite needed. Ross was just the first to make that move, but it didn't look like he'd be the last. And every new person entering the mix made things harder to control, turning the situation into something way beyond just T.I. and 50. It became a platform for old grudges, old rivalries, and unfinished business that had been sitting for years. That's where things got complicated for T.I. His whole stance was about defending his family, but now that same stance boxed him in. He couldn't step back without it looking like he was leaving his people exposed. But at the same time, every move coming from his side, whether he approved it or not, gave 50 more to work with. King's merchandise, the diss tracks, the shirt, the tombstone image, each moment added more layers, and none of it needed to come directly from T.I. to still reflect back on him. That's what made the situation feel impossible to control, because even when he wasn't making moves, the narrative kept building anyway. All of it turned into content. Every moment, every headline, every clip, it could all be pieced together into one story. A narrative about a family losing control, a father unable to manage what's happening under his own roof, and patterns that didn't just appear overnight but stretched back for years. T.I. wasn't just facing one opponent anymore. He was feeding into a format built to organize everything his family had already put out into the public eye. Those 2019 gynecologist comments came back into focus in a big way. At the time, the reaction was immediate and intense. The World Health Organization spoke on it, lawmakers in New York started pushing legislation, and his daughter publicly described the experience as traumatic on camera. Even though the headlines faded over time, the record never disappeared. Now all of those moments were sitting side by side. The past comments, the allegations, King's merchandise, the diss tracks, it all started to look connected once placed in the same frame. And that's the key point. A documentary wouldn't need to prove anything new, it would just need to line everything up in a way that tells a powerful story. That's where the real pressure builds. The legal system not reaching a conviction had always been T.I.'s strongest argument. But at the same time, the internal contradictions within the family started to chip away at how strong that defense looked in public. Because even if certain events weren't directly related, they could still shape how people interpret everything else. The earlier controversy had nothing to do with the later allegations, but when people see patterns, they start connecting dots on their own. And once that happens, perception can start to carry just as much weight as facts. A man who openly spoke about that level of control over his daughter's body was always going to face a tougher time convincing the public that the accusations against him had no basis. That's not even about the courtroom, that's about perception. And perception is powerful. It shapes how people see everything, and that surviving style format is built exactly for that purpose, to influence how the story is viewed. Then the timing of everything made it even worse. T.I. had spent years pushing for a Versus battle with 50, saying there was an agreement that never happened. But when 50 finally responded, he didn't step into the music side at all. He went straight at Tiny! And from there, things escalated fast in ways T.I. couldn't fully control. King's reaction took it to another level. The shirt, the video, the tombstone image, each move added more heat. And all of it gave 50 exactly what he needed to push things further while not looking like the one starting it. That shift mattered. T.I. framed himself as someone standing up for his family, but at the same time, those same family actions ended up giving the other side more material to work with. That's the twist. The defense started creating new problems instead of shutting things down. And once the situation grew into a bigger circle, it wasn't even just T-I-South fight anymore. It became something wider, pulling in people with their own issues, their own history, and their own reasons to go at 50. Rick Ross was the clearest example, but the way things were moving, it looked like more names could easily step in and keep the situation growing. Every new person stepping in made the situation harder to control. Why? Because these weren't people answering to T. They had no reason to stop just because he wanted things to cool down. The feud stopped being something he could win or lose. Instead, it turned into something that kept feeding itself new voices, new drama, new reasons for it to stay alive. That's what made everything feel unstable. Nobody on T.I. side was chasing the same goal. T.I. wanted a smooth exit, focused on protecting his final album and closing things out clean. But King had money tied into keeping the situation active, turning attention into profit. Damani was moving with his own purpose, trying to prove himself as an artist outside of his father's shadow. And Ross? He had his own history with 50 and his own reasons to keep things going. None of them were on the same page. Each had a different limit, a different point where they might stop, and none of them were coordinating their moves. That meant things could heat up at any moment, from any direction, without warning. And I wouldn't be able to control it or even predict it. Looking back at the documentary Threat, everything that happened made it feel even bigger. It wasn't just about whether 50 would actually release something anymore, it was about what could be included if he did. The family was already out in the open. The sons were already acting independently. Old rivals had already stepped in, and the merchandise had already added money into the mix. At that point, the situation wasn't slowing down, it was building momentum on its own. If that documentary actually drops, it's not hitting a solid, united front. It's landing right in the middle of something already shaking from the inside. A family showing cracks, a feud spinning out of control, and pressure building from every angle. That's what makes the threat feel even more serious. Now it's not just a possibility anymore, it's lining up with a situation that's already unstable. This isn't theory, it's already playing out in real time. So what happens when someone trying to close out their career can't even control what's happening closest to them? When the very family meant to be defended becomes the reason everything gets harder to defend? And when a rap feud stops being about music and turns into something bigger, a cycle of attention, money, old rivalries, and nonstop chaos? That's where things stand right now, and it's only getting more intense. If you've been following this, drop your thoughts below, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to see it.